Alrighty, here we are live, and good morning, happy Monday. I am very, very glad to be here again today on Facebook and Instagram. We are going through another round of the Astro-Babble. So we have 8 charts that have been donated by you, the lovely followers and clients and people of the internet. And we're going to take these 8 charts and we're going to read them cold, talk a little bit about astrology. This is something that I started doing during quarantine just for my own sanity, and y'all just keep asking for more. Good morning, Courtney. Good morning, everybody who's jumping on social media. So that's how we do it. If you or somebody that you know, like, and trust who's into astrology would like to be on the live stream, just have them private message me birth date, place, and exact birth time. I do need those 3 things. If you don't have time, unfortunately, I'm not able to run an accurate chart, and I do pride myself on accuracy. So that's that. Likewise, if you would like to schedule a private consult with me or like to learn a little bit about astrology, you can always visit my website at scorpiorisingastrology.com. So without further ado, let's go ahead and pull up our first chart of the morning. Okie dokie. And for those of you on Instagram, unfortunately, I cannot pull up the charts, but I can on Facebook. Figured that out, and you'll be able to see the replay if you'd like to see a copy of your chart. And yeah, we'll do it. So, my dear Gianna, let's take a peek at your chart. So we've got a Libra ascendant, which is just glorious. I always appreciate a good Libra ascendant, because Libra is that sign that's known for artistry and beauty, and putting that on the ascendant, it really does just sugarcoat the chart. And I love a good Libra ascendant. So let's take a peek at where Venus is in the chart. Venus is in Sagittarius in the 3rd house of writing, teaching, communication. Very talkative, my dear. I love Venus in Sag in the 3rd because it takes all of that spunky energy of Sagittarius. It takes all of that mutable fire and it pushes it towards teaching, speaking, writing, being a busybody in your neighborhood, a very community service-oriented placement for sure. It's a great way to utilize Venus, so I enjoy that placement. And a Cancer moon up in the 10th. We've got some softness, but we've also got some serious stuff that we need to address down in the 4th house, honey. All of that sugarcoating is disguising some really interesting stuff. That I'm not too sure you've learned how to handle yet, because it's all squaring your ascendant by sign. That is rough, my dear. So not only do you have a full moon in Cancer in your chart, which I have a new moon in Cancer, but a full moon in Cancer, I mean, you're not able to hide any of your emotions, like absolutely none. They are all up in the forefront of your life. There is no disguising that whatsoever. I have a Scorpio ascendant, so I'm able to hide what I'm feeling pretty well. But with a full moon in Cancer, Libra ascendant, like, you're just, not only do you cry at the drop of a hat, but it also, like, is on your sleeve all the time. There is no disguising how you are feeling in any moment of the day. And that's on, having a full moon in the chart, period, but especially a full moon in Cancer, which is a very strong full moon, because the moon is in her home sign in Cancer. She gets to bask in the waters of her emotionality, right? And the emotion of the ocean, if you would say. That's terrible. I shouldn't have said that. So that's what we take into account. It's not just where the moon is placed, but it's also what phase of the moon was it when you were born. A full moon has some serious emotional strength to it, but they can't disguise that. The moon is bright, like the moon in my background. It's at the forefront of the experience. Versus a new moon, those emotions are hidden, and that's something that I talk about in my interpreting your moon class, which I always enjoy because I'm a double Cancer. I'm a lunar baby, so that's one of my passions. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about you, Gianna. So what I really am having a hard time with in your chart is this Capricorn stellium down in the 4th house. So the 4th house is the house of family and home. right? And you've placed not only your sun here, so you've put a good chunk of your identity, your self-esteem in your home and family life, but you've also put your sun conjunct Uranus and Capricorn, co-present with Saturn in Capricorn, Neptune in Capricorn, and Mercury in Capricorn, all in the 4th house. All except Neptune and Mercury are combust the sun. But we do have this Uranus who's in the heart of the sun, which I think is super interesting, because when you're at home, girl, you let loose. You're crazy when when you shut that door at the end of the day, when you cross that threshold, when you pull down those blinds, you let it rip. You let it rip, girl. Like, there no filter at home, absolutely none. It's your own private kind of sandbox to throw up a smoke machine, the discotheque lights come on, and you just have your own little party. Uranus is that planet that's known for the unpredictable and the zany, and is associated with things like natural disasters. And so when that piece of you starts to get let out in a safe space, like, you just, excuse my gender wording here, but it's balls to the wall. Like, you just let it all completely hang out, and I'm here for it. And it's not like anybody who watches gets a bad view because of that Libra ascendant, girl. So you work with your bad self. But at the same time, I think that does bring into a little bit of an issue with the not so grounded nature of the chart. There's a lot of intensity, and that intensity needs to be expressed. So if there was one thing I would encourage you to do, it would be to make sure that alone time is definitely a priority, because you definitely know how to make the most of that alone time, but at the same time, there's this need to vent in a private space. And then we have Saturn, Neptune, and Mercury in Capricorn, all very stubborn placements in the 4th house, which is interesting because you're able to let loose, but then if anybody crosses your threshold, you turn into the drill sergeant, and you turn into this person who's constantly demanding and dictating the rules of the experience, and you won't let anybody else have fun because you're the only one who gets to have fun in your private space. Weird. I get it. Like, your life. No judgment. But still. Weird. So yeah, that's just a little bit about home life, but it is such an important part of your chart because we've packed these 5 planets, the stellium, into the 4th house of home and family. So that's what we would talk about a lot in the chart. Your choice in significant others is also really interesting because we've got this lovely Mars in Aries, and Mars just entered Aries. So your relationship scene, hun, is about to get some fire. It's about to get some serious fire. But you've decided to be attracted to and to kind of hunker down with very militant, aggressive, athletic, competitive energies in your partnerships. And I understand why that's attractive to you, and I understand that you really, really go after the flex. Yeah, that's one of the things that just makes your heart go whoo. But that can be just slightly antagonistic and inflammatory to your state, and that's something that I think will be turned up to 11 over the next 6 months as Mars makes that transit through Aries. But just be awares of that. Finances aren't really going to be mastered until halfway through the life with this Pluto and Scorpio in the 2nd house of finance. So that'll be a continual chore. And then halfway through the life, you'll just realize, oh, I get it, and everything will be fine. Also, the tendency for your spouses to bring in money, because that Mars in the Aries is ruling your 2nd house of finance. A large portion of your capital will be due to relationship dynamics. Then we have the North Node in Pisces in the 6th. You're learning how to be flexible in your work dynamic this time around. Like, you're learning about health stuff. You're learning about, to a certain degree, pets and companionship with fuzzy creatures. But just the idea of you specifically being a little bit less rigid in your workspace and potentially activating some of your entrepreneurial chip tendencies with this Jupiter in Taurus in the 8th, ruling your North Node from the 6th. So that's a little bit about your chart, my dear. I don't want to spend too much time because we were kind of kikiing at the beginning. So that's all I will say about that. Thank you, everybody, for sending in your messages and your charts. Good morning, Raven and Anita. I'm so I'm glad I got you out of bed for the chart readings. Okay. I'm so glad your mind was blown, my dear. This is what astrology should be. It should be, you know, a lot of my clients, when they work with me one-on-one, we have this conversation at some point during the interpretation where they're like, I don't understand how you can know more about me than my therapist does, and I've been seeing them for 10 years, and I don't understand why this is just hitting every point in my life. And I'm like, honey, it should. It should. That's the way astrology should work. If you go to an astrologer and they're telling you a bunch of stuff that doesn't really resonate with you, or they're trying to impress you with things that don't kind of sink into the life and you know to be true, then it's not necessarily an astrology that I would think would be very validating and important. Because once we nail you, once we get you down, once we understand the intricacies of your personality, then we can start to ask the fun questions, like, where do I go from here? What about this experience in my past? What about, you know, where I'm going in the future? What about these opportunities? How should I play this out? What am I looking for? And it should be an echo. It should be a reflection process. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Andromeda. They were born at 9 p.m. in Rockland. Let's take a peek. So a Pisces ascendant. So we have that watery vibe, first thing. And another kind of stellium, not an actual stellium, but we do have 2 calculated points up in the 10th house of success. Oh, and it's Jupiter! Jupiter, girl! Okay. So Andromeda, you've decided to put the most prosperous planet of the chart, which is Jupiter, our Lord Jupiter of perpetual abundance, in Sagittarius, his home sign, in the 10th house of success. When I say that you're an attention whore, I mean it with the most love possible, because Jupiter in Sag is just so expansive and regal, and deserves all of that attention, honey. Deserves it. Oozes it. Right? And I think that having such a strong Lord of the chart in the 10th house of success right off the bat just immediately catapults you into the spotlight. Now, there are things that you've decided to put in your charts to prevent some of that, to dial that down, and to understand that there's a difference between how you're viewed versus who you are, your truth versus the perceived truth. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But just the idea of you automatically throwing so much weight of your astrological natal chart into the 10th house of the spotlight of success, that's going to really continue to shine throughout the life as something that really pulls you into this fame dynamic. We also have Uranus in Sag, South Node in Sag, MC in Sag, and Neptune in Sag, all in the 10th. So we have this very Technicolor fantasy. It's like when Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz exits her house and walks into Munchkinland and everything is Technicolor, right? That's your 10th house. Like, that's where you've decided to put a majority of the weight in your chart, is that drama, that flair, that pop, that wow factor, and you've decided to do it just so wrapped in so much fantasy and so much of that unpredictability of Uranus. But what's interesting about this is that you've put the South Node here, and the South Node is the energy suck of the chart, and it's also where we've been, kind of life lesson-wise. It's not where we're going. So if you spend too much time in this 10th house dynamic, and you spend too much time in Munchkinland, then you're going to really start to feel like your life is unfulfilled. It'll be easy, but it's not right for you. Yeah? It's a skill. It's something that you can do very well. It's a performance art, but it's not who you actually are as a person. And unfortunately, that makes it really, really difficult because we have this Sun in Leo, Mars in Leo in the 6th house of work. So acting, being in the in the spotlight, something, again, very easy for you, walking into any work. You could be sitting at a desk job, yeah, and you walk into that office like you are walking down a Paris fashion show runway, and everybody is just Googling at you, because you're just the center of attention. Unfortunately, that's not where your chart needs you to be. It's a skill that you have, and it's a skill that I think needs to be honored. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, well, this is easy, and I keep getting this ease and this effortless from it, but should I actually be there, or should I do something else? And, it's kind of like, clients ask me this all the time, the idea of, should I do what's easy for a day job and pursue my passion at night, or should I, just have a side hustle that pays the bills and then devote most of my time to pursuing what actually makes me happy? And I really think that balance is very unique to you. For you specifically, I think we need to look at this Gemini North Node in the 4th house of family being ruled by a very, very strong Mercury in Virgo in the 7th house of relationships. I think that for you, the focus is about actually building a family this time around. I think for you, it's about learning how to be in a relationship. I think for you, it's learning how to not be the center of attention and actually how to, in a way, bow and buckle to the needs of others. Especially with this Venus in Virgo retrograde, what you might have found in previous relationships, especially when you were younger, is you feeling like somebody wants to keep you in the kitchen, like somebody wants to strip you of all of your glitz and your glam and your personal power and all of your ferocious fire that you have in your chart, and they just want you to go make them a sandwich, which is not okay. I'm not justifying that, but there is an energy of temperance that we need to understand about this chart. There is an energy of you needing to, go strut your stuff, but when you figure out that building a stable family environment and building a home and a partnership is going to be a little bit more important than all of this stuff that comes easy but isn't fulfilling, yeah, that's the crux of the issue, is actually using your watery ascendant, your ascendant in Pisces, and your watery moon, your 2-degree Scorpio moon, to say, hey, I actually have this other side to me that doesn't get nourished in the spotlight. It kind of needs somebody who's a little bit more intellectual, somebody who's a little bit more sensitive, somebody who's a little bit more in tune with my needs, as opposed to somebody who's just concerned with the surface. Right? So that's where we're going in your chart, is, we can't put out the fire. The fire has to be there, yeah? And you need to carry that torch. But you also need to be able to put that torch in a hearth, let it burn all night, and then retreat into this very intellectual, emotionally stimulating relationship where you can be your authentic self and be with somebody who can kind of see through all of the bravado that you naturally cultivate and make a life with you, as opposed to just making a living being the drama queen that's so lovely and easy and effortless in your chart. And the world needs that too. The world needs badasses who are just able to strut their stuff and be awesome with no apologies necessary. But you also need to nourish this deeper side of you, and you need somebody who's able to pick your locks in such a way that you still have that power and they recognize that, but they're able to kind of shift you into your own personal space. Yeah? Okay. So that's Andromeda. Excellent. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Lucia. Good morning, Tessa. Good morning, everybody on Instagram. Thank you so much for watching. Let's pull up chart number 3. We're going to Cynthia. Cynthia. I'm such a 90s kid. Whenever I see Cynthia, I always think of Angelica's doll, Cynthia. For those of you who got that reference, thank you. For those of you who didn't, don't worry about it. Okay, so Cynthia was born with, Scorpio. Hello, Scorpio. So we have Moon in Scorpio, Neptune in Scorpio, Ascendant in Scorpio. Even though your sun is in Cancer, honey, you're very Scorpio, very watery. So you're a triple water sign. So your sun is in Cancer, but then your Moon and Ascendant are in Scorpio, which gives you this very watery energy to your persona. Very spiritual, very deep, very dark, very mysterious. Almost the exact opposite of the chart that we just saw, to tell you the truth. Whereas we had all these fire placements with a little bit of water. Here we have all of these water placements with a little bit of earth, a little bit of fire. And we'll talk about that dynamic as well. Okay, so what I would really like to bring to your attention first and foremost, Cynthia, is that as a triple water sign, and again, I'm in the same camp. I tend to attract clients who have this very watery dynamic to their chart because I know the rules. I know the rules of this game. Like, we suck with boundaries. We get very easily compromised in social settings. We're highly intuitive, and people don't know how psychic we actually are. But we're also really sensitive, and people don't understand the level of emotional depth that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, which makes us very picky and somewhat standoffish on the surface. But inside, all we want to do is give love to somebody, and all we want to do is to be seen for who we really are, and all we want to do is make sure that other people feel safe in our presence, when really it should be the other way around, that we feel safe in their presence. It's a whole thing. Like, I could talk about water signs all day. And we just need to understand those rules, honey. Like, you're a very watery being. And especially putting your sun in Cancer and your North Node in Cancer in the 9th house of spirituality, travel, higher education, foreigners. There's this really cultured dynamic, cultured like Greek yogurt, which is a line that everybody seems to love every time that I say it, which I always associate with the 9th house because, travel, foreigners, higher education, spirituality, it's somebody, whenever I see strong tendencies like that in a chart, it's always somebody who has this worldliness about them, has this deeper knowing and a sense of interconnectedness that you can't bottle that. But you've got it in spades, Cynthia, so I really enjoy that. Oh, we've got so much in common. You've got your Mercury and Gemini in the 8th. I've got my Mercury and Gemini in the 8th. We'd get along just fine, girl. I like you. But the Lord of the chart is this Mars in Virgo up in the 11th. I think when it comes down to who you are as a person, you're a people pleaser. Yeah. Mars ruling the chart from the 11th house of friendships really does, and in Virgo, the detail-oriented sign of rules and to-do lists. Like, what makes you feel the most you is running errands for your friends and being that kind of like community organizer, director who's in some ways running around like a chicken with their head cut off to please other people, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think that you taking on so much responsibility is a dangerous combo with all of this water, because you are looking to over care for others and not care for yourself, which is a trap that all of us fall into on occasion, but especially water signs. We're prone to that in a very big way. And the idea of you specifically taking that to the nth degree with this Mars in Virgo also ruling your Jupiter in Aries in the 6th. Like, there's so much of this, I'm the community leader in charge, I'm the one who's directing everybody, I'm the one who has the clipboard, the metaphorical clipboard with all the details on it. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, there's this overly humble nature that takes over with the Mars and Virgo in the 11th, where you're like, don't thank me, I'm just doing my job, I'm just doing what I love, and you tend to refuse and reject the care that people would naturally give you. And we need to make sure that gets nourished in some way, shape, or form, honey. We need to make sure that although you're although you tend to overgive, we need you to learn how to over-receive on occasion, and that's not going to happen in the friendship circles. It's just not. When you're around other people, you tend to go into work mode, and that's not necessarily helpful. We need to invoke a little bit of this Saturn in Aquarius in the fourth, paired with this Mercury and Venus 1 degree away and Gemini in the 8th. We need you to practice a little bit of social isolation. In fact, this whole quarantine process was probably really, really good for you because it reminded you that you don't need to be active. Although there was a piece of you that kind of withered on the vine with this Mars in Virgo really did have a hard time not socially connecting. But when it comes to like how you rest and how you recover, it's very much lock the doors, close the blinds, and that isolating tendency, that apathy, that withdrawal, that extreme pushing away. And a lot of your friends won't necessarily understand that. They're like, wait, she was just literally the center of attention 2 seconds ago. Why is she pulling back so fiercely? Why is she going so cold? And what they need to understand is, like, that's actually who you are. You need both sides of that equation to be who you are and do what you do. And I think that, you know, part of you resents yourself for doing that, and it can be a really difficult dynamic because you need to be active, you need to evoke that Mars, you need to be able to run the world, yeah, and make sure that everybody gets what they need and that everything gets into its own little box and everything on the checklist gets checked. But you also need this almost extreme apathy. You need this ability to just sit in dark silence with your emotions and feel and let out, and to not be influenced by others, and to shut off social media, and to not be communicative, and to really just isolate is a good way to say it. So I think if we learn how to balance those two qualities, and tapping into your spiritual side where you're learning, where you're taking classes, where you're taking orders from others, as opposed to you being the one who's giving the orders, yeah, that's going to have to be a thing. So just keep all of that in mind as you go forward, and I think you'll be in a good spot for sure. Okay. So that was Cynthia. Cynthia, my darling. Yep, Laurel, I will message you for all of, you know, when I did the last all call, everybody, I got over 150 charts. So I'm very appreciative for all of the outreach, and please continue to send them my way. Just know that I am keeping a list. It is based on when you sent in your info, and I will get to them as soon as possible, and I'll message you when they're featured. But I am running a little bit behind, so I need to stop lollygagging. Shelley, my darling, let's talk about you. So we've got another Libra we have an Aquarius ascendant. Aquarius ascendant with Mars and Aquarius in the first. Interesting choice. With a chart ruler of Saturn in Taurus retrograde in the fourth, you chose literally the most stubborn ruler, Shelley. Okay, so let's talk about this idea, Shelley, of why you have this unnecessary amount of fierceness. Yeah. And I think that this is something that, especially when you were younger, you didn't really understand. But Mars in Aquarius and a Aquarius ascendant with Saturn in Taurus retrograde in the fourth, ruling it, like talking about isolation, like you're able to cut people out of your life with zero qualms about doing so. It's a very intense placement. It's a very cut and dry placement. You know, you can be, you know, a lot of people would think, oh gosh, why is she so bitter? Why is she so cold? Why is she so withdrawn? Like, why is she not fun? And it's actually the exact opposite. You are very fun. You've got this Sun in Sag and Mercury in Sag in the 11th house of friendships. Like, you know how to have a good time. But you're very selective about who you choose to be in your friendship group. and who you choose to give your time to, and you fully recognize that not everybody is tall enough to ride this ride. It's just a thing. And I think that that's what Mars in Aquarius does really well, is disassociate. I keep thinking of that meme on Facebook with Morticia Adams cutting the flower off the rose, and it just says, "You just can't cut people out of your life," and it just says, "Watch me." And that's what I think about with this chart, is just the idea of, not all flowers that bloom in the garden are good. And Shelley's uniquely qualified to treat flowers like weeds on occasion, and more so than an occasion, and just really understand that there is a pruning that constantly needs to happen in life, and Shelley is the master of that process. But having the ruler of the chart in Taurus in the 4th really does make you a homebody. It really does make you somebody who tends to prefer to cuddle up on the couch with a good book, to really retreat into the home dynamic and make yourself scarce, be a good way to say it. We do have the 6th house ruled by Cancer, with the moon in Gemini in the 5th. You'd be very good working with children, not just because of your no-nonsense, but also because you have a very broad emotional spectrum, and you're actually very good at empathizing with other people, despite how quickly you are to kind of cut people out. You're also very understanding, and like a kid who's crying, people are often very confused because you'll show this very kind of gushy side to you, where you're like, "Oh, honey, do you want me to kiss it and make it better and just give you a little Band-Aid for it? And everything's not as bad as it seems, darling. Why don't you go and play?" And then you'll turn around and you'll whip somebody a new one for the stupidest thing, and they'll be like, "Who are you? Who are you?" But that's just kind of part of your nature, yeah? So I think that I love the Gemini moon in your chart, for sure. I think it gives you the emotional range and your ability to, again, disassociate when needed, turn on a dime emotionally, and also use some of that Gemini wittiness to make sure that you don't fully cut off from the world, because the Gemini does give you a little bit of a heart to remind you that you can't do this alone. Like, you do need others to play with. When it comes to your personal empowerment, I'm a little concerned because we do have a detrimented Venus. We do have Venus in Scorpio, as well as Neptune in Scorpio in the 10th. And where are they ruling? Ruling the 4th, and ruling the 4th and being ruled by the ruler. I think that there's also this toxicity to fame, honey. This idea of when people get too loose, when people lose their morals, when they start to be sloppy, especially like you've experienced in the family dynamic, yeah. When people start to succumb to addiction, when they start to express these deeper, darker sides of Scorpio, when they tend to be victims of their own game, yeah. Not only do you have no tolerance for that, but it's actually a big red flag for you, because that's the last thing that you would want in your life, which is supposed to be productive and inspiring, and you're supposed to learn how to do all these things, and here are these other people that are just like making a mess of themselves, and you have a zero tolerance policy for that. And I think that you're right about that, for sure. But we need to respect that this is a little bit of an emotional sticking point for you, and we might need to unpack that a little bit, because remediating that Venus, I think, will bring about a little bit more compassion, and also understands that the people who are sloppy are also teaching you to let down your guard every once in a while. Let's see. Yeah, and you're attracted to that life at the party too, so I think that your spouse, your significant other, the person who you choose to kind of bring into your life, will be able to pull down that guard nicely. And then spiritual studies, financial studies, that's kind of where you're I see that. Like, you would be a really good travel agent, I think. in addition to working with kids. Like, you working on a Disney cruise would be excellent, just because, you know, you have the child element, you have the fantasy element, you have the travel element, you have the parenting element, you have the financial element, you have all of these things that I think come together, because ninth house is travel, second house is finances, then we have the Moon Gemini dynamic. Yeah, cool. That's the end of your chart. Thank you so much, Shelley. I appreciate you donating your chart to science. Okie dokie. Thank you, Alex. I love you, darling. You're so nice being my cheerleader. Okay, let's talk about TIFF. Oh, but before we do, again, if you or somebody you know, like, and trust would like to be on the live stream, just have them private message me their birth date, place, and exact birth time. I'll add them to the list. Please be patient. The list is long, but I will message you when your chart is featured. And if you would like to book a private consult with me, you can always do so via my website at scorpiorisingastrology.com. I also got astrology classes. I've got a fun YouTube channel. I do a daily forecast on Facebook, Instagram, and have a weekly forecast on YouTube, so check all that stuff out. Tiff, my love, my darling, how are you? Hyper Virgo, Lord, goodness gracious. So, North Node in Virgo, Jupiter in Virgo, Mars in Virgo, Ascendant in Virgo, Saturn in Virgo. Jupiter and Saturn are retrograde. Girl, you stubborn as hell. Stubborn as hell. You right, but you stubborn as hell. And I like it. I'm a fan of it. Like, I think it's good. But yeah, we've got this really meticulous, detail-oriented, checking the boxes, to-do lists energy happening in your first house. You know, this time around, it's not necessarily about love and relationships. No, this time around, it's not necessarily. Well, it's not necessarily about you discovering love or relationships. It's really about the relationship to yourself this time around. You developing and sinking into your own sense of identity and personality. You working on your boundaries. Boundaries. I'm going to say it again. Boundaries. Yeah. Saturn in Virgo retrograde so close to the ascendant. You know, it's making this very severe statement of, I need to learn how to control. And I must be in control. And I don't know if you know this, but relationships are very difficult to control. Just in case you weren't aware of that. So, when it comes to your relationship dynamic, I think it's important for them to know that they will always be in the passenger seat. Yeah. And that's okay. Like, if they're not up for that, then that's perfectly fine. That's their loss. But that's just a dynamic that we need to understand. It is both easy and difficult for you to relax at home. It takes a longer time for you to kind of unwind and decompress because this Neptune in Sag is making a square to your Virgo ascendant. So you both are able to relax at home and are not able to relax at home. It's a very weird position that you've put yourself in, because on one side you're like, well, now that I'm relaxing, I finally have the time to do what I didn't get done for the rest of the day. And now that you're relaxing, you're like, but I really should treat myself and throw a mini dance party in my living room. That would be fun. And the two sides of you just are constantly at odds. And I'm not necessarily a fan of that. I think that there's this dynamic tension that a lot of people don't understand about why. Not only why is it so difficult for you to relax, but why it has to be that way. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic for sure. Let's talk about your Sun in Capricorn, which adds to the earthy stubbornness of the chart. Same thing with Mercury in Capricorn. You know, your saving grace as far as flexibility is really this Libra moon. You have this lovely Libra moon in the second house of finance and wealth. Pluto in Libra is here as well. Pluto is making a loose separating trine to Venus in Aquarius in the 6th. I think that, you know, one of the ways that you can escape is through work. One of the ways that you can also escape is via finance, and you understanding the black and whiteness of numbers. Yeah, the numbers will give you permission to rest. The numbers will give you permission to take it easy. The numbers will allow you to say, I've done what I need to do. So I think a good strategy to help you with your relaxation dynamic is to have a financial goal set for the day. And then if you don't meet that financial goal, then you give yourself permission to do extra things to help meet that financial goal. But if you've met that financial goal, then you are contractually obligated to relax. Do you see how I use that word, contractually obligated? Like, that's the asterisk on your to-do list, is if you start checking boxes and you are able to meet that threshold, that goal that you set for yourself every day, then you are obligated by law to drop that to-do list and to go veg on the couch. And don't be putting asterisks on my asterisks, honey. I know your Virgo game. I know it. Yeah, there are no stipulations to that stipulation. Yeah. And I know you're like, but Sam, what about timelines? What about other people's expectations? Girl, we know that you work twice as hard as anybody else. We know it. We know it. With that much Virgo, please, run circles around all the asses. So that's just something to be aware of, for sure, is the way that you kind of hack your own life is by activating this Libra moon and understanding that softness comes from measurable data. And the chaos will come when you think that you're constantly chasing the carrot of your life. But if you actually measure where the carrot is and when you've got it, yeah, the carrots are underneath your feet. You know, they happen with task orientation. But if you keep chasing this imaginary idea of when you're done, when you're finished, when you're complete, and you don't tell yourself when that actually is, and you don't actually make that a tangible goal, then you're just killing yourself for no goddamn reason. Yeah? Okay. I'm glad we talked. I'm glad we talked. That is my gift to you. Happy early birthday. Not that it's your birthday anytime soon, but happy 6 months to your birthday. Yes, you Capricorn, you. Alrighty, cool. So let's move on to chart number 6. Let's talk about Tanya. Tanya, I miss you, girl. Wave from Florida. All this Libra. I can't. All this Libra. So we've got Jupiter, we've got Uranus, we've got South Node, we've got Ascendant, and we've got Mars, all in Libra. There's such a beauty to your aesthetic. And also, you know, you're also terribly obsessed with fairness. And we have to understand that life is sometimes messy, and you will sometimes not get your way, and balance is not always appropriate. So it's like that word, and I know that we've talked about this before in class, but the idea of homeostasis being a fluid process, not a destination point. Yeah? Homeostasis, true balance, is always in flux. It's never this right or wrong, black or white, like we talked about in the previous chart. It's an ever-changing cycle of coming in and out of balance. Because the minute that you try to force a balanced state, the minute that you try to force fairness, you eliminate the true essence of balance and fairness, because you're trying to rig the game. Yeah? You cannot rig this game. And that's a thing. Even when things seem out of balance, they are perfectly in balance. You just don't see where the balance is at that time. Blink, blink. You got me? Okay. So let's talk about this idea of your chart ruler Venus being in the 4th house in Capricorn. You know, I get, again, homebodiness. I get the idea of your house being your sanctuary and your aesthetic. We have a lot of 4th house rulers today, which I find really interesting. And a lovely, lovely, absolutely darling moon in Taurus, waxing moon in Taurus even, being ruled by that Venus. So, like, your home is your comfort space, and I really want you to understand that if you would like to truly unplug, yeah, you need to surround yourself with the typical spa day atmosphere. So you need to get into your bubble bath, complete with rose petals. You need to pour yourself a glass of something, bubbly and boozy. You need to, surround yourself with pleasant music and pleasant scents and soft fabrics and luscious food and all of those things that delight a Taurus moon. A Taurus moon is very much about the sensory experience and receiving joy from the earthly delights. Yeah. And the essence of your chart is basically kind of treat yourself. Yeah, that's very much the how we would unlock ease in your chart while you continue to fight for justice and blah blah blah. We know that you're a community leader. We know that because the sun in Sagittarius is ruling your 11th house of friendships via the 3rd house of writing, teaching, communication. You are just a little bit of a workaholic, so we want to be productive with that. And I think one of the ways that you can learn how to be productive is to actually leverage your community by writing, teaching, speaking. I think that should be a thing that you are not only aware of, but actively engaged in creating. And I know you don't feel like you should. And I know that, especially with this Mars and Libra ruling the 7th house of relationships, it can be really difficult when especially the people around you try to take away your power, and you let the secret slip that you're working on something big, and then they immediately tear you down for it, or ask you in a condescending tone, why would you want to do that? Or that's different. And it really just dashes your spirits. And I think that there's power in secrets. Yeah, there is such a thing as secrets magic, and I think that you should practice it. We need to invoke a little bit of the water element and remember to keep silent. Yeah, as you cultivate some of these fiery parts of your chart that almost demand to be cultivated. You seeking fairness is one thing, but you teaching other people how to achieve balance, I think, is a little bit more of a fulfilling role. Because in our profession, it's not just about the one-time session, right? It's about imparting knowledge and wisdom to people who actually need the tools, they need the expertise, they need the permission. Ooh, that's a big one. They need the permission in order to reach for something more, and you're in a unique position to give that to them. While taking care of yourself so you don't get burnt out. I think that you have a lovely dynamic with that there. You specifically holding classes in your home, that might be a thing, or digitally, from the 11th house of tribes and social media. I think that would be an excellent thing. Finances are tricky for you. And I get it, Neptune and Scorpio, you have this tendency to hoard money away, pocket it away, because you feel like it could be taken away from you at any moment. And you also just enjoy hoarding treasure. It's just a thing. But this Neptune in Pisces in the 2nd does bring an element of mysteriousness into finances that I don't like to see. So I would highly encourage you to not do your own taxes. I would highly encourage you to maybe work with a financial planner, somebody who can sort out the financial world for you, because it's not going to be... It's not that you're not good at it, because you do have skills there to a certain degree, but you'll always miss something with that Neptune. Especially with that Neptune being ruled by Mars in Libra, which is a planet in its fall. You're always going to miss something. Even if you triple check it. Even if you Google how to do it 1 billion times, you're still going to miss something that a professional would catch. So I would encourage you to surrender your finances to somebody else. To kind of manage and to work with, so that you can get the most bang for your buck. And relationships are tricky. We can go into that on another day, but it's workable. It's all workable. We just need to do specific remediation, because there's just a lot of, you've chosen this time around to master relationships as a whole, but you've also put some pretty high hurdles in your way that I think need to be unpacked a little bit. And you know this. I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know. But I think that, when in doubt, karma points require you to kind of work on your relationship and delve into some of those books, delve into some of those podcasts, and to really understand what it means to be with another person, what it means to have the home be a garden that you can cultivate and also reap reward from. But people don't always make it easy to do that, do they? Yeah. So planting the seeds that you're given, but also learning when to go out and buy seeds that you enjoy. It's a thing. We'll talk about it. So thank you, my dear. I appreciate you donating your chart. We have two more charts. And we have 10 minutes to do it. Let's talk about Sarah. Sarah. Oh, honey, how you doing? How you doing? Miss your face. Let's talk about Sarah. Capricorn ascendant. Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn as well. Whenever I see Neptune and Uranus, Neptune is that planet of whimsy and fantasy, and Uranus is that planet of unpredictability. But when they're in Capricorn, something that I find with the generation that was born with Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn, there's a withholding. There's a sense of not taking pleasure in those aspects of life. There's a holding back, yeah. And we talked about this at length, but just the idea of why you got to be so withholding, why you got to be so reserved, why do you have to hold your cards so close to the vest? And I think part of it is because you've got this Aries sun and this Mercury retrograde in Aries in the 4th, where you're really just super concerned that you're going to say the wrong thing at the wrong time, and the words are going to fall out of your mouth quicker than you can pull them back, and that's totally a thing. So I get it, it's justified, but we also need to understand that Capricorn doesn't just lock things away in a vault and never touch them and never touches them again. There is a what's it called? There is a permeability to Capricorn that gets unlocked at higher levels. So as you start to navigate this Capricorn ascendant and pair it with your Aries sun, I think you understanding that you biting your lip is not always the accurate move. It is accurate until you find the words to say and how to say them. So it's perfectly fine for you to say, I appreciate the conversation that we're about to have. I'm not in a place to have it. Let me put a pin in this, write down my thoughts, and get back to you. I think that that's a really easy way for you to navigate this Uranus-Neptune ascendant in Capricorn, and then this Aries Mercury retrograde in the chart. So much emotionality in the chart as well. A Pisces moon makes you very intuitive. A Venus in Pisces and a Mars in Pisces in the 3rd house of writing, teaching, communication. There's so much of this watery energy, so much of this lack of boundaries when it comes to speaking and sharing, but that's not a bad thing, right? Especially with this Jupiter in Virgo retrograde in the 9th. Higher education is difficult until you do it, and you're the one speaking. Yeah, that's the issue that I think you have with growth. Is it's one thing to take notes and to be a student and to bow your head and to recognize that somebody knows more than you, but you can't do that to the extent that you compromise your own wisdom, because there's a lot of it. This Venus in Pisces and Moon in Pisces in the 3rd makes you an extremely intuitive teacher, makes you somebody who's able to psychically tap into the questions of their students before they ask them. I think that that's valuable. I think that that's needed. I think that that's important. I think you would also do very well traveling abroad, learning abroad. I think that, although words are difficult for you, language is very important. Yeah, and I think you should study multiple languages. I think that there's this idea of you teaching in a foreign language, especially, that would be really interesting. because we've got this Jupiter and Virgo retrograde in the ninth, and Jupiter loves to make things big, Virgo likes to make things detailed, and retrograde it's kind of backwards. Like, it's weird, but it's a perfect complement for you to break through your own language barriers, to study somebody else's language, and then to teach them what you know from your experience, by being that bilingual self. Saturn and Aquarius in the second, there is this drama about money, about never having enough, about needing to be the hermit, the pauper, somebody who's constantly on their last two pennies, and that's a story that you keep telling yourself over and over and over. And I think that that's not noble to a certain level. Yeah. As you hit your first Saturn return, that's going to be easier, because that Saturn will mature and start to flourish a little bit more. And Saturn is in the air sign of Aquarius, so it's a little bit more intellectual as opposed to the earthy groundedness, the practicality. I just think that with you specifically, understanding that money is not evil, money takes you where you need to go. Money is a tool. Money is something that you can turn on the universal spigot and attract. It's not that you need to walk through the streets penniless all the time in order to justify your presence there. Yeah, I think that the words in your head are, money can hurt people, money can do terrible things, and I don't want to do terrible things, therefore I won't have money. And or, if I do have money, then that makes me more of a target for other people to rip down, because I'm good at what I do and I earn stuff based on what I do, so that makes me more prone to criticism, which your poor little Pisces moon can't take. Like, the fame aspect, the fame element is definitely something that's a catch-22. It's a little bit not all right. But as you start to explore the chart, I think as it unfolds, you're going to start to realize that, your stubbornness, once it's controlled, is an asset. Your impulsiveness, once it's controlled, is an asset. Your affinity for languages and learning, once controlled, is an asset. But if something's difficult, it's just because you haven't cracked the code. So crack the code. Sit with it. Pull it apart. See what's underneath all the rocks, and you're going to find that there's treasure buried there. Like, you've specifically put an Easter egg hunt in your chart, but if you're willing to do the work, then the treasure is definitely there. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, Bernie. Good morning, Carrie. Hello, Carrie, my darling. We have one more chart to go through, and it's Heather, and just a couple more minutes to do it. So Instagram will probably kick out before I'm done. If you would like to see the last bit of it, watch the replay on YouTube or find me on Facebook. Let's talk about Heather. Heather has a Scorpio ascendant. Woo! Pluto very close to the ascendant. Woo! I love it. She is a Scorpio baby, even though her moon is in Virgo and her sun is in Virgo. We won't talk about that. We will talk about that. But, having an ascendant with Pluto, both in Scorpio, so close to each other, I think we need to understand that Heather, there's this underworld vibe that you can't hide from people. And the more that you try to hide it, the more that you try to suppress it and act like it's not there, honey, the more you're just going to be doing yourself a terrible disservice. I think also having your chart ruler in Libra in the 12th house of hidden enemies does tend to make you your own worst enemy. Yeah, you have this very friendly persona with the sun and this moon in Virgo in the 11th, very service-oriented, very much about the greater good of the community, somebody who's very much thinking about the needs of others before their own. But, there are deeper, there are darker, there are more intense aspects to your chart that I think need to be explored and unpacked. Having this ascendant and Pluto in Scorpio in the first house, does give you this very powerful essence of what it means to be deep and penetrative and emotional and intuitive and hypersensitive and just tapped into intimacy and the gooier, stickier aspects of the world that everybody turns away from. Yeah, you're able to navigate those worlds with a charm that very few people understand, and it makes you very intimidating. as well. But I think if you just rest on the idea of your moon and sun being in Virgo, and you try to play this Virgo card all the time, and you don't acknowledge the Scorpio side of you, then we're going to have a problem, because you're not going to allow a good chunk of your chart to be expressed. Yeah, especially because so much of your life is going to revolve around your healing journey. You know, this Mars in, and there goes the 30-second warning on Instagram. This Mars in Libra is in the sign of his fall. He doesn't like to be in Libra, and he's also ruling the 6th house of work. And I think that you working in the medical field, the medical profession, and putting that Scorpio ascendant to work and that Virgo sun moon to work, like, you'd be an excellent nurse. You'd be an excellent person who's able to survey a health situation, make very quick and snappy decisions, and also save somebody's life because of your perception. Yeah, I think that's a really big part of what makes your chart interesting, is you have these very perceptive skills, these very detail-oriented skills, but you try to suppress them because you think, oh, if I'm too good at what I do, then I'll get noticed for the wrong reasons. And you can't fear that. You know, your Sun and your Mercury have a mutual reception. You have Jupiter in Leo, Venus in Leo, MC in Leo, up in the 10th, all being ruled by your Sun in the 11th. You know, you have a gravitas in your chart. And I think the reason why people gravitate towards you and the reason why they trust you right away is because they see how vulnerable you actually are. They see how sensitive you actually are. And they see that, you know, there is this humbleness to you that is not inauthentic. It's because there's damage there, and you're uniquely able to work with those social dynamics in a way because not only are you creepily intuitive, but also you're able to see through others' facades, and you're able to work within dynamics of health and healing that don't succumb to people's bravado. Yeah. So as an example, you know, a patient, or a client tells you, oh, I feel this way, but your alarm bells are ringing and you're like, no, that's not how they feel, they're lying to me. You know, that's a skill that you have, and you can monetize that for real. And I think especially the more you get catapulted into this 10th house of fame and fortune, you know, you have so much good stuff here. You have both benefics in the 10th house of success. Like, you've got some really cool aspects in your chart if you allow yourself to actually embrace them. Like, yes, have your Scorpio time, have your retreating time, have your decompression and your kind of hypersensitive pity parties, which I know because I have them too. But if you don't respect that, the more sociable you become, the more people are going to want to elevate you onto a pedestal, and that's really where the money is going to come from in your chart. Yes, you know, working in a healing profession and doing the grunt work is what satisfies your soul, but also as you get good at what you do, you have multiple fame placements that are just kind of catapulting you into that 10th house of success, which I think is really beautiful. You'll be offered teaching positions, you'll be thrown in front of the crowd, and it's going to make you uncomfortable, but it's also something that you're good at, because let me put it this way, and this is something that I talk with clients about a lot as well. If they put somebody else in that position, chances are they would take advantage of it, and you know that. Yeah. You know that they would take advantage of it because they don't have the same actual compassion that you do. They don't have the same eye for detail that you do. They're writing on their personality and their status as opposed to the genuine hard work, which you have no problem putting in. You have no problem getting dirty in the trenches. In fact, you enjoy it. Yeah? But that trench work also makes you uniquely qualified to do the exalted work in your chart, the publicity work in your chart, the socialization work in your chart. So I think balancing those two things is going to be really, really important as you move forward. And because you have so much stacked into your success in your workhouse, I think that that's the major aspect that needs to be understood. And again, I think that you really should take the teaching position part-time, and especially next year as everything moves out of Capricorn, out of your writing, teaching, speaking house, and you actually start to get stuff done without the oppression of these retrograde planets. When you're offered these positions, I would say yes, but part-time, because you always want to have one foot in the weeds. You always want to have one foot in the actual day-to-day work, and that's what makes you good at what you do. Cool. Excellent. Thank you, Heather, for donating your chart. I'm not taking consultations from the floor, but thank you. Yes, so that is it from an Astro-Babble perspective. I appreciate everybody who's been watching. Thank you so much. This is just me having fun with charts that y'all have submitted. If you have questions, comments, concerns, if you would like to book a consult, like to learn astrology, you can always shoot me an email to sam@scorpiorisingastrology.com or visit my website, just scorpiorisingastrology.com. This will go up on our YouTube channel, where I have a weekly forecast, and make sure to follow on social media with Facebook and Instagram to see the dailies as well. And yeah, we'll be back on Wednesday to do it again. If you would like to add your chart to the list, just private message me your birth date, place, and exact birth time, and I will add you to the queue. Until next time, may the stars be ever in your favor.